Okay, I think we should start. I know others will probably join. I hope so anyway. But we have Andy Williams here on this, what in Montana is a really pretty St. Patrick's Day. So happy St. Patrick's Day. And she's going to lead us through an orientation to the CCL's Boundary Spanning Leadership Digital Toolkit. And so this has, are you hearing me? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. This has a variety of tools that you all can use within your organization to facilitate teams and planning and et cetera, and then also in the community. And I think it's really fabulous. So I'm going to turn it over to Andy. Andy, thanks so much. And all of you, I hope you recognize Andy from this summer, where she are one of our presenters. So thanks, Andy.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be with you today. You may not recognize me. I got my hair cut, which is relatively recent, but and I'm really excited to be with you all today to give you some more resources to help expand your boundary spanning leadership practice. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share our boundary spanning leadership toolkit with you. And I'll talk a little bit about why that's important to us too, and how you're doing us a really big favor in being some of our initial users for a new platform that we're using. So it's a great opportunity for me as well, and I appreciate you all joining in to learn more about it. So before we get started, I'm gonna just, can you see the whole slide? Jane, can you see the whole slide?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. I have stuff covering it for the group chat and stuff, but just want to make sure your view was okay. So just to get warmed up, we're going to be using the chat feature today, so we're going to practice a little bit with the chat feature. And I'd like you to just type in the chat feature a response to this question. Name something that captured your attention on your way out of your home this morning. Just take a minute and type in. So here I am in North Carolina talking about my beautiful trees. I apologize. Nice. Thank you. That's great. Thank you for testing that out and just kind of becoming grounded in the space we're in. I can see you all have a lot of snow there and a lot of melting snow that's happening. Here in North Carolina, we are full into spring and we're seeing daffodils, beautiful flowering trees that have come out, and just really enjoying this. So you've probably a little bit longer to hang on, but it's coming. Spring is coming. Okay, so as we, let's see. Great. So what we're going to cover in the next hour is I'm just going to take a few minutes and review the boundary spanning leadership model. It's been a few months since you heard it. That was way back in July when we were together and experienced the model, talked about the model, talked about direction alignment and commitment. And so I thought just refreshing your memory about what it all is would be helpful. And then I'm going to demonstrate our boundary spanning leadership digital toolkit, all the features that are on there and how you can apply what's on there to your work. So I have some sample agendas and some options that you can take away from this webinar to immediately begin applying some of these tools. You'll also receive a copy of the slideshow. So along with the recording, I know Jane will send out, there will be, I'll go ahead and send her copies of the slides so you can have those as a reference point as well. So you don't have to take notes necessarily during this webinar. So another quick chat question. How have you applied what you learned back in July around either direction, alignment, and commitment, or boundary spanning leadership in your work as a community health strategist? So is there maybe one thing you took away that you were able to apply that you could share with the group? You can again go ahead and put that in the chat box if you have something to share. If you'd prefer to share it with the group verbally, just go ahead and unmute yourself, and that'd be great too. All right, I'm not seeing a lot of messages populating the chat box, so I'm going to ask you another question. Let's see. If you've not applied anything yet, what has gotten in the way? So we had one response, it was great. Spent some time examining the partners, what are the partners that are needed to move forward in the concept. That's a great first step, absolutely. What about for others? If you've not applied anything yet, what's gotten in the way of that? Yep, lack of time, competing priorities. It does take time. You're exactly right. With everybody's busy schedules, even taking time to spend your energy to think about the steps that are needed can be a barrier. Absolutely. So thank you for sharing that. And hopefully what we're able to provide today will help give you some pre-packaged things that you can use to quickly get to where you want to be with some of these strategies. So you don't have to invent something. You can take something that we know works and be able to apply it. So I think that will be helpful. Right. So as you recall from our session in the summer, we at CCL have a very specific definition of leadership. We believe that leadership is a social process that enables people to work together as a cohesive group to produce collective results. And when leadership is happening, there are three outcomes that are in existence. And those three outcomes are direction, alignment, and commitment. You may recall we did an activity where we had a tent pole and people had to try to lift it up, had to try to lower it collectively. And there were some pretty critical things that needed to happen in order to get the tent pole to lower correctly. And those key things that we explored were direction. Was everyone on the same page? Is everyone moving in the same direction? Alignment. Do we all recognize the activities that we need to get done and they're coordinated? And then commitment. Is the group committed to the collective success more than their individual agenda? So we saw those things play out in that activity, and that was a great learning experience. And this is also something that you can examine in your day-to-day life to see where leadership is happening. So you were given a link to a DAC assessment where you could take a look at what is happening on your projects or in your health department to be able to examine where is that kind of piece that's maybe missing. Is it a direction problem we're facing? Is it an alignment problem? Is it a commitment problem? So that's a really nice assessment and can really help you target where you want to spend your time on a particular problem. And when we talk about boundary spanning leadership, direction, alignment, and commitment is an important concept because it really is at the center of what boundary spanning leadership is. So boundary spanning leadership is the capacity to create direction, alignment, and commitment across boundaries in service of a higher vision or goal. So looking across all the different boundaries, we talked about, let's see here. When you have multiple groups that are coming together there and you want to work together on something big. So this could be the work you're doing as a chief health strategist. It could be work even within your department when you have different functional groups that need to work together to get to a problem, to solve a problem or get to a new way of working together. And in order to do that, you need to have direction, alignment, and commitment across those different groups. And that really is a higher order of leadership. It takes our basic definition of leadership and ratchets it up quite a bit. So the extent to which we can provide you some tools is really, really beneficial to your ability to take this and apply it. So as you'll recall, we identified 5 boundaries through the research that CCL did across the world, and it actually was about a decade-long research project. And these 5 boundaries are really helpful in kind of identifying what the boundary type that you're trying to span is. It could be something horizontal, it could be a demographic boundary you're trying to span, and it could be multiple of these at once. It could be a demographic, vertical, geographic boundary. And so we explored a lot of that in the session around what kind of are some of those barriers in being able to span the different types of boundaries. So that's important to be aware of and just refresh your memory about a little bit as we dive into this. And there were 3 universal strategies that came out of the research. And this really came out of what was working for leaders who were doing this really, really well. What were the key things that they were able to do to effectively span boundaries? So we identified these 3 areas: managing boundaries. This is the one that really taps into the power of differentiation. Forging common ground, which is the one that taps into the power of integration. And then where we want to go with the new work we're doing together, discovering new frontiers. And that can really happen at the edge of those 2 things when you're tapping into the power of innovation. And what's really powerful and what we learned is that innovation really happens when diverse experience and expertise intersect to get much more creative solutions to problems when you're able to tap into that power of different groups coming together for a common goal. So along that one axis is where we differentiate, and you can see here the other axis is where we integrate. And these are 2 really powerful human needs that we all have. One is the ability for us to differentiate. What makes us unique? And in order to realize the managing boundaries strategy, you've got to be able to tap into that uniqueness. So what really is important to that particular group, that particular individual, what makes them unique? And then we all also have a need to integrate, to become a part of something larger than ourselves. So those powerful human needs are something that we can tap into to have new frontiers that we can discover together. Now, the arrows here look like it's pointing to like step 1, step 2, step 3, and that can certainly be the case, but it's also a dynamic process. And once you do some work in managing boundaries and maybe move on to forging common ground, you'll often have to go back and do more managing boundary work. So even though they are layered or nested, it always is a dynamic process to be examining kind of what is the particular need now, who is maybe a new partner we need to bring in and establish a relationship with. So from these from these 3 strategies, we uncovered 6 practices. And these practices all have some pretty specific outcomes. So we talked about buffering and the outcome of safety, reflecting, how that outcome fosters respect. And those are necessary ingredients in order to build trust, which is the outcome of the connecting practice. And then within mobilizing, that's where you're really coming together into a new way of thinking about things as a community. And that can lead to interdependence with the weaving practice, and then finally transforming, which allows for reinvention. These are all really important practices, and you don't necessarily have to have the ultimate goal of transforming. You could have a really important outcome. We just need to be able to work together as a community or as a team to be able to come around a common goal. And that may mean that you get as far as the mobilizing practice, and then you don't necessarily go into the weaving and transforming practices. That is great. These things all still work. You don't have to get to what might be a very transformational thing. You can really use these same practices to get to trust or to get to a place of respect. So they're valuable in lots of different ways, lots of different relationships in your work life and in your personal life. So I was able to attend the collective impact discussion last month, and it really got me curious about how our definition of leadership and boundary spanning strategies really intersect and complement collective impact. So collective impact, as you know, has 5 conditions for success. They're a common agenda, shared measurement, mutually reinforcing activities, continuous communication, and a backbone organization. And those things are all really important things that need to happen in order to get to a place where you can move collectively towards impacting something really, really important in your community. Where I think boundary spanning leadership really can help accelerate the work of collective impact is around paying attention to these specific practices, these specific human needs in service of these important conditions that need to happen for collective impact. So for example, in order to create a common agenda, there's a lot of buffering work and reflecting work and connecting work that needs to happen in order to get to a place where everybody's really bought in to that direction and they're committed to it, right? So I've just attempted to, align these a little bit. There's certainly, I think you could make a case how a lot of them are, kind of all 3 or all 6 strategies, but I kind of picked some primary ones to really shine a light on. And so, for example, shared measurement you've got to have alignment in order to do that. And how do you know, if you're measuring things, you've got to have those, again, buffering conversations, connecting work. Do we all trust that we're collecting it the same way? And then weaving would come into play here. How might we do something differently to be able to achieve this shared way of measuring things? So I think they all play into each other in a really nice way. And I think what boundary spanning leadership can do is really support your ability to create the conditions of a collective impact success. So the boundary spanning leadership digital toolkit is something that we've developed. It's been at least 5 years ago. And we did it from some work that CCL was doing with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation at the time was developing community coalitions around the country to come together to address critical health issues in their community. And so through our work with these coalitions, they said, you know what, it would be really, really helpful if we had some practical application of what you're teaching. It all sounds really great, but how do I go back into my community and do it exactly the same kind of barriers you all have identified came into play. So we had that digital toolkit sitting on one particular learning platform for a number of years. It's been used by thousands of leaders. And so we have some good evidence that the stuff that's out there is really helpful. What we are now doing is upgrading our platform. And of course, when that happens, there are bugs. There are things that might be things we haven't run into in our testing, and where we really feel like when Jane and I were talking, you all could help us be among the first users of the new platform and simply let us know your experience. So we will query you later this spring with a survey just to let us know how things were working for you, what things maybe were frustrating for you, so we can create a better product. So it's really a win-win for both of us, and we really appreciate your willingness to do that. So the next step after this webinar is you will receive an email from CCL. It will not come directly from me. It will come from our learning platform. And it will give you all the information that you need to know to initially sign in to the system. So if you don't receive that, I'll have my contact information on this slide deck. You can contact me and I can troubleshoot some for you and circle back with our IT team to make sure you get it. I will say occasionally the email goes into spam, and so that might be a place to check as well before you contact me. But I'm very happy to help in any way I can to get you signed in. So there's a few things related to the toolkit that I think will be really helpful as you're starting your work. There's some specific questions and even a diagnostic tool that's embedded in the toolkit that can help you kind of assess where your group is right now. So say you've been together for a long time and maybe you really are at the mobilizing stage. That would be really good to know, and then you can target in on some of those mobilizing practices. Say you've been together a long time and you're still at the buffering stage. That also would be really helpful to know, and that can help you, again, target your strategies. So I would recommend being thoughtful about where you want to plan and practice, and the best way to do that is through some assessment. The assessments are really quick and I think can get you where you need to go pretty quickly. And then I would recommend doing just a little bit of planning and practicing. So a lot of what is included in this toolkit are group process tools, as James said. And so, you don't necessarily want to go out with all your key stakeholders and that be the first time you do that. You might want to practice with your internal team or, a team across, just your department or something like that, before you go out and bring this to stakeholders that you don't have a relationship with already. So that's just a little bit of advice around practicing. And then just taking the tools and trying them out, using them in different ways, seeing how they can help you be more efficient in your relationship building, be more intentional with what you're trying to do in terms of creating these important outcomes in order to advance your relationships. So a few questions just to get you in the frame of mind to think about where you might be in the boundary spanning leadership process are displayed here. So has each agency represented already done a good job of buffering? So do we all know exactly what these other agencies do? Do we know what their non-negotiables are? Or we maybe think we do, but we want to check that assumption and maybe uncover some new things that we didn't know. I will say that buffering is among the most overlooked practices. So it often is the thing people rush past in order to get to the next step and can be just so time saving in the end. So you could get, 10 steps ahead and find out that one of your key partners actually can't do something that you really need them to do because of maybe an internal policy or something. That would be really, really helpful to uncover at the beginning of your relationship. So we have some great tools for having critical conversations, just some dialogue tools, and some other group process tools to help you with that. And then again, same with reflecting. Do we all understand and respect what these other groups do? And then critically with connecting, does trust exist between all the groups involved? And then in addition, I mentioned on the toolkit, on that very first page, there is a BSL assessment. This was also in your workbook from the workshop if you want to go back and look at that again. And then, you'll just have to be thoughtful about who might complete that assessment. Is it maybe the leadership team? Is it some key agencies? Is the full membership? You'll be the best judge on that. And then it gives you some data to be able to tabulate and share where the group thinks the work needs to start. So I mentioned, I'm not going to go through all of these options, but I just wanted to show you that we've put together some pre-done agendas for you. If you're getting ready to start a new relationship and you're at the buffering phase, this is an option for a 1-hour meeting. So you maybe have a 1-hour meeting. This is something you can take and tailor to your specific needs, and it's already there for you, already pulling out some of the key activities that are included in the toolkit. We've also provided a 90-minute option if you have a little bit more time and you're at the buffering stage. Same with mobilizing, a 1-hour meeting option. Maybe you've gotten pretty far in your relationship and you want to get to that ultimate visioning piece, like what are we actually doing together? These are some options for doing that. And again, a 90-minute option. And as I said, I will send all of these slides in the PowerPoint version so you can just copy and paste it if you'd like to use any of these agendas for your upcoming meetings with a variety of groups that you're working with. All right, so now I'm going to dig into the toolkit and do a demonstration of what you'll find on the toolkit.
So Andy, this is Jane. Just a quick notice within those agendas, you've embedded the tools that are in the toolkit. So there's a lot to that agenda that really is kind of hidden. But I know
exactly. So let's
need to jump.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So that's a great clarifying question. So for example, on this agenda, you can see here we have something from the reflecting practice, and it's called the Boundary Defining Conversation Guide, We have a PDF version of that in the toolkit that you can print off. You can email it off to the team members ahead of time for them to reflect on and come, or give them 5 minutes at the beginning of the meeting if there's limited time availability before the meeting. There's a connecting practice here, and then also a mobilizing practice. So I will show those different options as we go through the toolkit, but that's a great point to point out. Each of these agendas has some time suggestions and a specific activity that you might choose to use if you wanted to engage in a connecting practice or a buffering practice. Any other questions before I jump into the toolkit? That was great, Jane. I don't have it, unfortunately that chat feature got hidden. So if anybody has chatted, I apologize.
And this is Jane. If anybody wants to pose a question while we're kind of in the middle of this, go ahead and unmute yourself. Or if you want to chat, you can just send the question to me and I'll kind of jump in here and make sure that it's heard.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So I'm going to just shift over to the Boundary Spanning Toolkit. When you sign on, you will come to a landing page that looks like this. And there are some big buckets. There's a introduction and train the trainer kit. There's the specific activities around managing boundaries, that first strategy, forging common ground, and then discovering new frontiers. There's also something down here called networks that has some information too that's not specific to the boundary spanning work necessarily, but might be of interest. Some additional nice information around network leadership, which might be of interest to you in your work as well. So let me just go ahead and jump in. When you come to the toolkit, a great way to ground yourself is to go ahead and take a look at the introduction page. This page has, like I said, a lot of information that can be easily downloadable. We know that a lot of times you just want to take this information and be able to email it to somebody or be able to print it really easily. And so we've made that a priority. So for example, if you click on this, you'll get a really nice resource. It's kind of a really nice thing just to have printed out to be able to easily remind yourself about what the different practices are, what the outcomes are, and then what are some key tools that are available. The other nice thing about this particular document is that it helps you understand when to use the particular tool. So for example, we have a tool called Team Blueprint. This would be really helpful to use at the start of a project or to define and communicate the work of the group. So for each different tool, there's when to use column. So that's really valuable, I think, and a time saver. So I just print that out and have that on my desk if I need to get something really quickly. Other things on here, again, the assessing where you are. This is something, again, you can print out and share. There's kind of a cheat sheet that you can print out if you want to have that as a one-pager, something you can also share. One thing that's really, I think, nice on this page is we have several videos you can explore that give you some additional context around boundary spanning, about the research, again, defining the 5 boundaries. If you want to go back for a refresher. And then there's the Boundary Explorer cards that you all got at the session. It's a great teaching aid, and what is really nice about this is you can download a presentation, an Explorer guide that gives you the ability to, as a facilitator, walk others through this, this model using the cards as a teach aid. And then we also have a video, a Train the Trainer video that you can review. It's about 20 minutes, and gives you pretty much everything you need to know to be able to walk others in your community and your organization through this model. So I wanted to highlight those things because they're really, really helpful tools in being able to take this concept and let other people even know what is this model that that might be helpful to us as we're doing our work, our collective work together. Okay, so let me go now to each of these practices. So I'll highlight a couple things about each page. Each practice page looks like this, where you can see sort of a table of contents about the different tools that are available. Again, the description and when to use. It also has a downloadable document that talks specifically about that practice. So great reminder of what the purpose of this practice is, and then some reflection questions about you know when you would use this, and then some specific tactics. So that's all there as a resource. And then for each of these, there is a description of the tool, the actual tool that you can download, and some supporting documents that help you be able to facilitate that particular tool. So there's some sort of background documents here that might be helpful as you're creating a team blueprint. Well, what are some effective team norms? So this document can help you with that. What are some best practices around how to monitor and maintain a team? And then what are some user stories there? Another really helpful tool in the buffering piece is around team boundaries. And so you'll recall that this particular, so this is what one of the specific tools look like. You can see it's a PDF, you can easily print it off, share it with others, and it gives you information about how to use it, when to use it, and then materials you might need. This one requires some flip charts, markers, and sticky notes, and then how to do this particular group process tool. So in buffering, as you'll recall, this is really a good opportunity to understand where each member of the group is coming from, what they're bringing from their organization. So there might be some work within this group that belongs in the group work, and stuff that we want to clearly identify that belongs outside of this group work. So you can use a sticky note process to facilitate a discussion around what's in and what's out. And that can be really helpful, again, in creating that sense of safety for groups that are coming together to work on something. You may not have all of your different values aligned, but there are some things that you agree on, and you can agree that that's what you're going to focus on. So that is a potential tool that you can use related to buffering. And then there's one more here that I want to highlight. I'm just spending a little bit of extra time on buffering, again, because it's the one that can often be overlooked, and I think just has a lot of value in being able to have some things in your back pocket that you can pull out when you're facilitating some of these early conversations with groups you want to work with. Okay. Sorry, my computer is just being a little bit slow. we must have had a lot of people all of a sudden decide to do something because my bandwidth just went to nothing. Apologize for that. It's taking an extra second. Okay. Okay, so the other one that I want to highlight here is called Defining Conversations. And this is a really helpful tool, again, to get that clarity that you want on the front end when you're working with groups maybe that you haven't worked with before. So this Defining Boundaries Conversation Guide is something you can take and edit and, just do whatever you need to do to make it apply to the groups that you're working with. So in this guide, it has some very specific reflective questions that help with that initial sense of clarity and kind of, are we all on the same page around this? So you can see here, if a group comes prepared to talk about some of these questions, it can really help you better identify, what are the things that we're able to work on together? What are the non-negotiables, things that are kind of outside of this? What are the actual resources that the group is able to offer, whether that be human resources, maybe space resources, maybe financial resources, all kinds of things. And how do you want to communicate? Again, getting back to that collective impact, continuous communication condition, we really need to be clear about how we are going to communicate information. So if people have done a little bit of reflective work before they come together, this can be really helpful. It's also something you could tee up in a meeting and then give people for homework to come back to the next meeting with some of these ideas discussed back at their organization. It's often something that maybe an individual can't make a decision about themselves. So, okay, let me just, and then you can see here a lot of these specific tools have videos associated with them as well. I'm gonna show you a couple more of these practice areas. Close a couple of these. Okay, I want to identify the So the reflecting practice here has quite a lot of resources, and I want to just show you the list here. And then this also, I think, is helpful to see that a lot of these practices can be used for more than one of the, a lot of these tools can be used for more than one of the practices. So here's a whole bunch of reflecting tools that you can see. For example, sometimes, it's really helpful to do a process check, kind of where are we in this discussion? And so there's some practice called Stop, Reflect, Write, Report, where everybody kind of takes a step back, writes down what's going on for them right now, and then shares their thoughts. That can be a really powerful experience and a way to get more voices in the conversation than maybe those highly extroverted people who are always speaking out. So some of these are really nice to be able to balance getting different voices, more voices into the conversation. So you can see here there's a list and then there's also videos that you can take that walk you through. If you were to want to create a fishbowl experience, what does that look like? There's a video there for you. And then same with these other practices. SBI is a feedback model that we have at CCL called Situation Behavior Impact, and that is also a really just great resource for you to go back as a leader to review. Okay. All right, I'm gonna cruise through a couple more of these, and then I'm gonna pause and see if there's any questions. So as you'll recall, the connecting practice is really where you kind of take a time out and connect with each other as humans. And that is a really powerful way to build trust. And so some of these particular connecting strategies are really easy to build into existing time you might have with the groups you're working with. Walk and talk, for example, it can be like 5 minutes where you maybe tee up a question or something that you want the group to go off and reflect about. You give them a partner and they go and have a conversation that's not about the thing you're getting ready to talk about, and it creates that human connection that we all need and value to be able to work together. There's some other things here that around mementos. If you're kicking off a project and you're really seeking a way for people to become connected with the work, you can ask them to bring something that is really valuable to them in terms of why they want to do this work. Why do they want to be part of this particular group working on this particular thing? And that, again, that ability to kind of put something in the middle. You'll recall we did this with the Visual Explorer cards when we were together in July, where it kind of gives this thing that we're all talking about. And it can create a way for people to express maybe some feelings, emotions, or things they wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable doing without having that thing in the middle. So this particular tool walks you through exactly how you would tee that up for people and give some examples and all that kind of stuff. So it can be really helpful as a connecting tool. And then I'm going to switch to mobilizing. And again, in mobilizing, you're really talking about getting that shared sense of purpose, that shared work that you want to do together. And so there's a number of group process tools that can help you, maybe zero in on the thing that you want to work on together, or visualize the thing that you want to work on together. So that's what these tools are really helpful in getting. I'm sorry, getting all kinds of messages that it has low bandwidth, which I've not experienced before, so I apologize. So here's some of the mobilizing activities. You can see here there's a long list. Here is that DAC assessment, that direction alignment commitment assessment that can help you identify, are we producing direction alignment commitment? What are people's perceptions about that? We did this recently on my team, a team of about 40 people, and there was pretty much division between people who thought we were doing a good job on direction, a good job on alignment, and a good job on commitment. And so you can do that through a number of ways. One really effective way is for everyone to take the assessment, then get a sticky dot and go put it up there on the one you think we're doing the best at and the one you think you're doing maybe the least at. And so then that opens up a conversation. Well, okay, this is what we really need to focus our effort on. Fist to 5 is a really powerful tool that, again, brings everyone into the decision-making process. You have a scale 0 to 5 about how things are going, and at the same exact time, people vote. And you can get a real good, real-time sense of where the group is. And so that's really powerful in bringing people who need additional information to be bought into the process, or kind of identify where maybe some confusion is. So it's, again, a simple group process tool you could incorporate into existing meetings you have to help clarify where the entire group is. about a particular topic. And then again, all of these have supporting information with them and PDFs that you can print off and share. Okay, Jane, I think I'm going to pause there and see if there are any questions that people have. We only have about 5 minutes left. If there are no questions, I can kind of cruise through the last two, but wanted to make some space for questions if people have them. Would love to hear from you all.
This is Jane, and I just wanted to kind of pipe in here. You know, I think we have a tendency, and you said it in the training, and you said it earlier about especially the buffering piece, but we're, many of us are, you know, kind of science-oriented people, and we want to get stuff done, and it's like, come on, let's get to the table, let's make a plan, let's go. And I think we really do miss some of the care and feeding piece of the people we're involved with and the groups we're involved with. And I just am reminded when I look at this of that myself and in my own career of where I've tried to hurry up and get something done. And then, oops,
right.
had to backtrack. So I really want to encourage that this is a treasure trove. It really is. And I've used a few of these. And, you know, I'm going to challenge this group. We're going to have another round of the small group meetings. And I'll put something together and get it out to you all about when. But I'm going to challenge folks to get in here, look at it, and try to use one tool before we get together and have a conversation about that. And I just, you know, many of you are supervisors, and that SBI, I think, is one that I just don't know anybody who has kind of gotten their hand on it that didn't think, oh my gosh, it's so straightforward, but it really, it's pretty helpful. So I don't want to take the time, and I do want to hear from a couple other people, but there's a lot in here, and it really is about care and feeding, and we know we don't get anywhere if we don't do that piece. And I also just love the practical things to bring to meetings, and I think you guys have done a great job with that. And I have wandered around in here, so I kind of have a sense of it, but I'd love to hear from anyone about what you're seeing here and where you might take it. Okay, we have no brave souls here.
Well, let me, Jane, maybe one thing I can do just to echo your, now I've gone through, just maybe bring up one of these agendas again, just as, you know, an opportunity to think through how this maybe could work. And so you can see here, you know, really reflecting can be a 1 to 2 minute highlight, you know, from each organization, from that boundary defining conversations guide. So that can be done in a lot of different ways. You could have people maybe come prepared with a slide. You could have, you know, a group in the moment just kind of write some stuff on a flip chart, and or, you know, even pick, you know, from images. We use Visual Explorer. You can do the same exact activity with images from a magazine or, you know, postcards or anything. But it really helps like get to those critical issues that you were talking about, Jane, in terms of uncovering things that might cause missteps later on. And that's really the point of that buffering piece, creating the safety within the group to really share some of those critical things that everyone needs to know. And this gives a, a process for doing that. And so people can feel much more comfortable if there's a process and everybody's doing it. And then they're much more likely to voice what needs to be said in order to make the work successful. So I think that's a really powerful takeaway from this, is that these are tried and true process tools that you can use to help really with any group that you're working with, but in particular to try to get to some of these specific outcomes that are really have been shown to be effective with boundary spanning. Again, connecting, here's a simple one related to the Memento tool. You could ask a question, what's an image that illustrates how they view effective collaboration? And that can be a jumping off point for a really important conversation that can help shore up the trust in the group. Mobilizing this, again, that DAC assessment tool. And you can also, there's a tool in there called slogans, where you kind of visualize what might be the newspaper headline if your project was successful. And do we all agree on that? And so there's some really nice process tools that can help you then visualize where you want to go. And that, as we know, is really critical in creating that shared direction, and then for collective impact, that common agenda. So anyway, I know it's 3 o'clock, we're over time, but I really wanted to go ahead and see here.
Yeah, and I really want to thank you. I thank you also for taking the time to overlay with the collective impact piece that we talked about last month. That was really helpful, Andy. So thanks for doing that. The other thing I just want to say is, you know what, guys, I think that really building facilitation skills is part of building capacity in your organization. And so, don't think that you have to kind of even like use the words that are being used here, but sneak some things in. The other thing I like in there is there's some questions that are really helpful in generating dialogue in a meeting. There's so much in there. So I say go forward, and I'll send you all a little assignment, and we're going to get to using this. Thank you so much. We'll look forward to getting your email.
Great, thank you. And I'll just put in one more plug. My family and I are going to Montana in June for vacation, and we're staying in Whitefish and going to Glacier. So if you would like to, I'd love any recommendations you have. So we're just so excited, and can't wait to come and see your beautiful state. So thank you for your time today, and really look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Andy. Bye, everyone.
All right, take care. Bye.